Hi, I'm Danielle Dick, and I direct the Rutgers Addiction Research Center, which is the largest addiction research center in the country, with over 150 researchers who span everything from neuroscience and genetics to epidemiology, prevention, treatment, recovery, and policy. And my own work focuses on why some people are more at risk for developing problems with addiction than others. And by addiction, I mean substance use disorders and related behavioral addictions like gambling, gaming, and other mental health conditions like depression or anxiety. So we know that part of the reason that some people are more at risk is found in their genes. It's the luck of the draw when it comes to the DNA sequences that we're born with. So about half of the differences between people in how much they drink, smoke, use other drugs is due to differences in their DNA. And the other half is found in differences in their environments. And so for each one of us, we know that the likelihood we're going to develop problems is due to this complex mix of the genes that we carry and the environments that we encounter. We have made radical advances in genetics over the last few years. So I lead a large international consortium aimed at identifying genes for substance use disorders. And we have learned a ton about how genes influence risk. And one of the things that we know is that most people think of genetic risk as if I try a drug, I'm more likely to become physiologically addicted to it. There's something about my biology that puts me more at risk. And we know that that's one of the pathways that genes influence risk. But in fact, that is actually the smallest pathway. There are some genes involved in physiological response to a drug, but most of the genetic predisposition toward why some people are more likely to develop problems with addiction isn't found in the way their bodies respond to drugs. It's found in the way their brains are wired. And so by that, I mean we all differ in how our brains process risk and reward. And so you can think about where you fall on these dimensions, but some of us are really sensation seeking. We like to take risks. We like to try new things. It's sometimes called that dopamine rush. Um, and our brains are more responsive to reward. They're more reward seeking, and they are less likely to immediately stop and think through, ooh, what are the potential consequences of this? Should I do this? Should I not do this? Other people, their brains naturally kind of weigh that more quickly. And that pathway, which is called the externalizing pathway of risk, is the biggest risk factor for substance use problems. So people with brains that are wired toward more impulsivity and more sensation seeking are more likely to develop problems with all kinds of different drugs and other forms of addiction, like gaming or gambling or social media excessive use. And so we have actually identified hundreds of genetic variants that are involved in that risk pathway now. The last pathway is through emotion regulation. So we also differ in the way that our brains are wired toward anxiety sensitivity. And people who are more prone to anxiety, if they don't learn good coping strategies as they're growing up, then we know that later in life, they are more likely to potentially use substances as a means to cope. But hopefully, you can also see that understanding how genes influence risk also means that we can prevent problems, hopefully, before they start. So we are actually launching just this month the first comprehensive addiction risk evaluation system, which we call CARES. You can find it at addictionrisk.com. And this is essentially an online platform that provides individuals with personalized risk profiles. It integrates all those genetic findings. So we scan the entire genome and we take those thousands of locations that influence risk, each of which has a tiny effect on its own. But when we add them all up, then we can create for each individual a genetic risk score. But because genes are only part of the equation, there's also a behavioral and an environmental survey. And what that measures are the behaviors and the environments that in our studies of thousands of kids, followed from early childhood into adulthood, it's those factors that were most predictive of who went on to develop problems. And so the care system is essentially you spit in a tube, we take that saliva sample, we create genetic risk scores, and we take that behavioral and environmental information to provide personalized risk information so that then you can essentially understand your risk profile to reduce problems or prevent them before they even start. If you're interested, we actually have a study going on right now where you can get your risk profiles for free in exchange for filling out some surveys and letting us know what you think about the profile. And then we're interested in how it affects people's substance use and mental health. And you can find that at addictionriskstudy.com. In addition, if you're interested in learning more, I have lots of resources about understanding substance use, as well as other kinds of mental health outcomes that are available on my website at danielledick.com or through my center at addiction.rutgers.edu. Have a wonderful semester, and I wish you health and happiness.